Hello, and welcome to the Granite Cornerstone. I'm definitely muted. I should have known that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Marat, and I'm the host of this podcast, and I am here to present to you episode number 1, entitled, Is This Thing On? I'm joined tonight by 2 very special guests. Right Worshipful Brother Christopher Busby, the Grand Lecturer of the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire. Chris, welcome.
Hey, Tim. Good evening, brethren.
We were also here he is. We are also joined this evening by Right Worshipful Brother Scott Newberry, the District Deputy Grand Master of the 2nd Masonic District. Scott, how are you doing this tonight? You are also muted.
That's because someone told us to all to mute earlier. So yep. I actually did. Once in a while, I actually do what I'm told. But I'm doing well. How are you doing tonight, Tim?
I am doing very well, thank you. So the reason we are joined by these 2 brothers tonight is because they represent a quorum of the Grand Lodge Communications Committee, and it is very much thanks to their efforts, as well as the efforts of Right Worshipful Brother Ryan Flynn, that this podcast has kicked off. And to give us a little bit of a background on why this medium was chosen and what we're looking to do and accomplish with this podcast, I'd like to ask you, Chris, what was the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, so this podcast is actually over a year in the making. When Most Worshipful Brother Clay, before he was installed, he formed his new communication committee that comprised of us 3, and as a part of his pillars, the goal was to really increase communication throughout the jurisdiction, and thanks to him, and his willingness to be able to embrace new technologies, we're able to do this. And I'm very excited about it. We all know that, just because we're a traditional organization, that sometimes we're a little bit slower to embrace change. But this sort of platform was made easier to use by, unfortunately, COVID. Which, you have to look at the bright side of these things, right? And it looks like a lot of brothers are starting to utilize social media in different ways, video, and so that was really our goal, to make sure that we took this opportunity at this time to be able to continue expanding the communication of Grand Lodge and of New Hampshire Masonry. So just a little bit more about what we're hoping to do. So. One question that the committee really talked about quite a bit early on was, does Masonry need another podcast? There are a lot of really great Masonic podcasts, including the Winding Stairs, the Masonic Roundtable, Whence Came You, etc., the Freemasons podcast, but we're not here to compete. Not that podcasts compete with each other, but we're not here to compete with that from a content perspective. What we hope to do is really talk more about what's happening in New Hampshire Freemasonry, spotlighting brothers and their stories, spotlighting lodges, really understanding more about our own history. One of the things that we've realized in this process is that we're a small jurisdiction, but we're a little bit, more geographically spread out than a lot of small jurisdictions are. So it's really important to find other ways to be able to communicate. As we move forward, brethren, what we hope to do is to, well, first, the reason for this particular episode, very informal tonight, is to get more information from you. Your input is extraordinarily important to our efforts here. And we want this to be a positive experience. We want it to be educational. We want it to be fun, and we want the brethren in the lodges to learn something about each other. Our lodges are 59 lodges in the state. We all have our own struggles. We all have our own wonderful things that we do as a part of our culture, and I think it's important to be able to share that information in a way that can be disseminated quickly. So this is really what we're here to do. Right now, we've got 4 podcasts scheduled. We've got tonight, which again is very casual. The next episode that we've scheduled is on September 20th, and it's called The Grand Master's Gab. Thank you, Right Worshipful Newberry, for that title.
You're welcome.
We have 3 Grand Masters that are going to be on. I think this is pretty unique. I don't know that I've seen this before. We have Most Worshipful Brother Clay, obviously our Grand Master. We have another sitting Grand Master and Most Worshipful Brother Richard Maggio from the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. And then we have a junior past Grand Master from the Grand Lodge of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, Most Worshipful Brother Kenneth Boynton. Part of that and part of the discussion, we'll talk a little bit about how things have changed and sort of what we've seen and sort of some of the challenges that the Grand Masters have seen during COVID-19. That's not all that we're going to be talking about, but that's one piece. And we think that they're going to have a lot of insight to be able to offer. When we were talking about this, we thought that the Grand Masters really don't get much of a chance to tell their story, and we think it's a compelling story. Most Grand Masters spend a decade or more on their journey to the Grand East, with a lot of ups and downs along the way. So I think it's really important for us to be able to understand those brethren and what they've gone through, contributed to the craft, and I think it's a good place for us to be able to start. The next 2, beyond that, episode 3 is going to be called We've Been There, and that is going to be focusing on our seasoned brothers. We're going to have 3 brothers that have been in the fraternity for 40 years or more, and we're going to, again, Tim is going to be carrying on a discussion with them. It's going to be just that, a discussion. This is going to be the only time that you're going to hear somebody just talking at you for 5 minutes or more. These are all meant to be discussions. We're looking to be able to really share that experience and knowledge and the reasons why those brethren join the craft, and what they've learned and experienced along the way. The flip side of that is our 4th episode, which is going to be called We're Just Getting Started, and that's going to be featuring some of our new Master Masons, and actually, I think possibly 1 or 2 that are still on their journey through the first 3 degrees. So that's really exciting. Also, I'm very much looking forward to that. And brethren, we will definitely accept any recommendations that you have for brethren to participate on either of those, episode 3 and episode 4, that you might think may have some good stories to tell. So that is sort of our initial plan. We hope to have 8 episodes between now and the next Grand Lodge annual communication in May. So we do have the 4 episodes planned, but we have 4 episodes that are completely open at this point, brethren. So that's where we need you to be able to help fill in those gaps, because again, we need to know what you want to hear to be able to make this interesting. If it's not compelling, then no one's gonna watch, and we could be doing other things. So it's important that that we really get some good content here from you guys. But even if we don't, we're going to keep going on for a while with all of the content that we have. But regardless, we're very excited about this. I think this really provides a unique opportunity that, frankly, few other Grand Lodges in the world, to my knowledge, are doing. The final question, really, to answer here, is where can you get the podcast? Well, if you're seeing this now, some of the venues, right? We're going to be on YouTube. We're going to be on the various Facebook channels. We're actually streaming on Twitch tonight, which is a new a new venue for us, and probably about 3/4 of the brethren have never heard of that. It's actually more for music and gaming, but we're giving it a shot. And then at some point here in the near future, once we have a few episodes in the can, so to speak, then we're going to upload the audio versions of the episodes to where folks normally get their podcasts, certainly iTunes, Spotify, if we can do that. So that is really sort of our goal, and it's a lot to spit out in a very short period of time. But really, at this point, from Tim or Scott or from anyone that's online, we're happy to answer any questions and take any feedback that you have.
Well, thanks, Chris. That certainly answered a lot of questions. And to reiterate a little bit about what Chris said, I'm going to be hosting this podcast moving forward. And it is very much something that I will need the support of the brethren of New Hampshire to help with. Because we do need to find out, in order to deliver a product that we think is going to be successful, we really want to hear from you and see what it is that you're looking to get out of a platform like this and what we can deliver as far as content is concerned.
So, Chris, the question I have for you is, if someone has an idea for a podcast episode other than right now, tonight, while they're watching, how can they get that information to us?
Well, that's an excellent question, Scott. Thank you for teeing that up for me.
Well, with everything else you covered, I thought I'd ask the question you kind of left out.
So we have yet a new email address. So it's Granite Cornerstone at nhgrandlodge.org. So the title of the podcast, so the at nhgrandlodge.org. And that will come to all of us, both myself, Tim, Scott, and Ryan, because it's important that we all get to see everything that's come in and be able to talk about topics and questions going forward, and to make adjustments in how we do this. I mean, this is a great platform that we're using. I think we've got a lot of the things in place, but there may be recommendations from folks that have done similar types of things that we haven't thought about. So please, brethren, do absolutely share your feedback, because this is going to be easier and I think better with your participation.
Chris, we have a question from YouTube coming in. The question is, what are the dates for episodes 3 and 4? Obviously, we've got episode 1 going live, and episode 2 we have a date for already.
Yep. So the other 2 dates, and so for those that use Facebook, we'll be posting events for those. Otherwise, we're going to be sending all of the dates out through the Grand Lodge office, through Grandview. But currently, let me just kind of go through all the dates. Episode 2, the Grand Master's Gab, the air date, they're all Sundays, September 20th. And then episode 3, which is our seasoned brethren, is going to be Sunday, November 1st. And then We're Getting Started episode 4 would be Sunday, December 13th. So that covers us really through the rest of the year. And brethren, you'll notice that, I've alluded to the Masonic Roundtable and other podcasts. They do things every week. We're not there yet. So we're spreading things out a little bit. Again, a lot of this is very experimental for us. And, we want to see sort of what kind of engagement and interest we get. So that will help determine going forward. I think after the first, certainly 9 months to a year of us doing this, sort of what our what the interest is and what the appetite is for more of these.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. So, Scott, why don't you give us a little bit of background as to what you see a successful podcast being, as far as how we can measure that success and what we may be able to see moving forward?
Well, from my perspective, and as I look at the dates we've got coming up, the first 3 podcasts tonight and our next 2 episodes all fall within, as we all like to affectionately call, visitation season. So I'm hoping that if this is a success, or at least we've generated some interest, I'll hear about them as I travel about the district during visitation season. I hate to tie any one item to another, but it's where a good place to get engagement idea is. If someone's listening, somebody likes what they're hearing, I'm hoping they'll come up and say something to one or all of us. It's probably the best way to gauge if something's being successful is the word of mouth piece. I can look at stats all day long, but let's face it, if people aren't talking about it after the fact, the engagement, the interest really isn't there. So that'd be one of the areas that I'd be taking a look at. Obviously, I'll be watching my email account, both the one that you've set up for this podcast and my own district office email address to see if anything comes in and what the feedback is. And of course, I'm waiting to hear from those that are online. Hopefully, they're popping other stuff in there for us, Tim. Like telling us to be quiet and they want to listen to Chris more.
Well, we've got somebody saying that apparently your sound is a little bit out of sync with your video.
Okay.
We do have a question from David Evans Brown in the YouTube chat. It says, for those of us not so technically savvy, what is a podcast and how can we get them?
So podcasts are typically episodic content, like this is, typically distributed on a few different channels, not limited to, but inclusive of iTunes, Spotify, a few other locations as well, and basically allows you to be able to listen to the content, whether it was an audio. There are audio podcasts that are just audio only, or video podcasts, which is what we're doing here. But we're going to take that audio, isolate that, and upload that so that if somebody is driving in their car and wants to go to Spotify or iTunes and click on that, like they'd listen to an audio track, that they listen to in their car, or if they turn on Spotify for their music, then they can do so for this as well.
We have another question coming in from YouTube from David Cumming. It says, would we be able to download the podcast onto a flash drive and then play it on a smart TV for a program at a lodge meeting?
That is an excellent question. I'm probably going to have to get back to you, Right Worshipful. I'm not really sure just because I haven't done that. But with these, because we can extract the video, you should be able to do that, yes. But it is important to note that this is, we're talking on, you're chatting on YouTube right now, I can see. And once this is over, it's also going to be available here at the New Hampshire Freemasons channel, and it will have its own link. So you could do that, but if you have Wi-Fi in the lodge and wanted to broadcast it that way, you could certainly do that through YouTube.
And because we are going to be isolating the audio for upload, that audio version will certainly be available as a downloadable MP3 from the platform of your choice for podcasting.
Yep.
And additionally, I believe the Twitch stream can be saved, and we may be able to make those available. So we'll certainly look into that as an option for saving both, obviously, the replays on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook, but also for a downloadable replay, we can look at where we can post that and make that available to you. So watch the Facebook page, which is the Granite Cornerstone podcast, and we'll be able to post some updates there.
Absolutely. I do want to actually, because I do see a chat that's come through here that I'm going to say, and that is that Brother Andy Lane said that we need to make this a comedy so that we can hear Tim's laugh.
Yeah, Chris, you're just not funny tonight. You got to step it up.
No, I'm not.
Oh, he was a lot funnier earlier, that's for sure.
He was. Yeah, that is true.
I'm really more unintentionally funny than anything else, but thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it.
So we've got a suggestion in YouTube from John Gray. Says, seems like it would be nice to be able to to view the podcast via Grandview.
No, yeah, that's a really good idea, actually. I don't know what the capability is of that. Actually, Grand Secretary and I were talking about a few things in reference to Grandview here the other day. So that is something that I'll absolutely bring up to him as well to see if that's something that we can do, because that's a fantastic idea. That'd be a great way to centralize that.
And for all you brothers who are not signed up, make sure you do sign up for Grandview. It is a fantastic platform for your lodge, but it also is a great way to get information out to the brethren in mass. And I think that seeing more support for that would be a great thing. So that's a great suggestion.
Tim, if I may, the one thing I do want to mention that I didn't mention before in sort of my my diatribe about what this is, what this isn't, it will be from time to time, obviously, but what this isn't is, we're not focused on Grand Lodge here as far as the content. There will be times where the history of Grand Lodge and Grand Lodge officers will come on, absolutely. But really, this is meant to be accessible to the brethren, and not, you hear enough about what Grand Lodge does, and thankfully so, but and it's a wonderful thing. We have great communication through the Grand Lodge office, but it's really more about really, sort of boots on the ground, the brothers that, that are really doing great things in this jurisdiction that we really should be highlighting. Not that our Grand Lodge officers aren't doing phenomenal things too, they are. But what we'll probably end up doing is keeping, and that depends on the Grand Master, obviously, as things go on, keeping the Q&A sessions going forward so that the Grand Line has the ability to be able to communicate in this method or similar to the brethren, and then this for, really telling those stories. If that makes sense.
That's a really good point, Chris. I think that it's important to mention that this podcast is intended to tell stories and not necessarily to convey a message from the Grand Lodge to be used in that way. I think that, as you said, we're going to have a lot of opportunity to have the Grand Master and the Grand Line on and discuss things that are important and coming up. But really what we want to hear is those stories that you don't get a lot of exposure to, especially as Chris mentioned earlier, we are a widespread but very small district or jurisdiction, and as a result of that, we can lose sight of some of those brothers who, if you're up north, you don't hear what's happening down south, and vice versa. So we really encourage everybody from the entire spectrum of New Hampshire Freemasonry to reach out. We do have a question in the YouTube from some guy named Kenneth Clay.
I'm sorry, I've never heard of him.
He's got some notoriety in New Hampshire. But Kenneth Clay wants to know, when will the next newsletter be sent out?
Oh.
He loves reading them.
Well, that's an excellent question. Though not specifically related to this platform, but I'll answer it anyway.
But it is it's communication
it is
related.
Communications, yes, it is. So our intention is to it is. So to speak, at the press, it's being laid out right now, so we expect that it will be distributed on Wednesday of this week.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah. Have some really good articles in there. And we're going to continue to that point. Nothing that we are currently doing is replacing anything else. We're kind of adding to our repertoire of things that we're going to be able to do in order to be able to keep, brethren informed and engaged. So,
Chris, we've talked a lot about, obviously we have 4 episodes that have been planned. Those were very much the brainstorm of the communications committee.
Mm-hmm.
But what sort of topics do you think this podcast should be looking for when we ask the brethren to provide feedback? What sort of feedback are we looking for? Are we looking for episode ideas? Are we looking for names of people to talk to? And what sort of format can the podcast expect to have going forward?
Yeah.
When you look at, obviously, where we are tonight and what sort of differences we may see.
So the answer to your question, all of your questions, is yes. We're definitely looking for ideas for podcasts. Again, we will continue coming up with things, but again, we want it to be driven by the brothers of this jurisdiction. As far as that's concerned, you mentioned before stories, and I think we talked a lot about that. I think that there is a lot of work done by brethren, and I mean that in a very broad sense, whether it be improving their lodges, increasing retention, helping their community, telling the stories of brothers that have just been unsung heroes, telling the stories of lodges. We have this jurisdiction, this grand jurisdiction is one of the oldest in the world. And we have a lot of very historic lodges with very interesting stories to tell. And so those types of things, but also outside the box of that, it doesn't necessarily have to be within that bucket, but we really just want to focus on what New Hampshire lodges are doing. For example, if a New Hampshire lodge has a great mentor program that they're utilizing in their lodge for their candidates, we could have a few brothers on, from various lodges that are doing these types of things so that we can help the lodge, we can disseminate this information and give ideas to our lodges and how to be able to implement some of these types of programs. Whether it's that or, maybe there's a lodge or a group of lodges that have done very well with Masonic education. I do hope to cover some of that at some point. If the brethren want it. So things like that. I mean, those are the few examples that come to mind very quickly. So
I think a great example of something like that is, we can actually get some expertise here from Right Worshipful Newbury. Scott, you're a member and past master of St. Mark's Lodge.
I guess I can admit to that.
Okay. It's in the bio. It's fine.
I know.
And one of the things that St. Mark's does very well that, a lot of brothers, especially in the 2nd District, are aware of, but maybe not outside, is your Christmas tree sales. And I think those sort of stories are what we're looking to highlight, is what is it that lodges do that are exceptional, that are different, and that bring awareness of Masonry to both the Masons in their community, but also to the community at large. And I think, the Christmas tree sales, whenever I think of a community outreach effort by Freemasons, especially, as a member of a 2nd District Lodge, I go straight to St. Mark's and their Christmas trees. And I think those are the sort of stories, just to pick an example, that I would love to hear about. And things that we don't hear about other lodges unless you're paying attention to Facebook and you get those advertisements.
Yeah, I mean, you happen to pick on something that, St. Mark's has been doing for several decades at this point. I've actually been there and present when we've had a 2nd or 3rd generation family show up to get their Christmas trees from the lot. And in fact, St. Mark's is so well connected to Christmas trees, we've actually kind of adopted it as our unofficial logo for the lodge. That's why you see the little Christmas tree on a lot of our stuff. It's because we've become that lodge, and we tell people every year, if you want a Christmas tree, come down. You got to come down early because, we have so many people that show up to purchase them. I don't remember the last time we didn't sell out. So, and it's usually the people right around the area, and it's the same people every year. It's the community, right? Most of them are within walking distance. Even though we're on the main drag, we get very few stops just for a drive-by. It's usually people who have been there before. So It's nice to see the same people coming back. And in fact, it's not just the community that comes back. In some cases, it's our brothers that come back. We had a brother several years ago who was shopping for his Christmas tree, and we were talking, and when he mentioned that, he had been a member and he hadn't been too active in recent history, his wife turned to him and said, well, when are you going to start going back? So it was kind of a nice thing to see something like that show up, But yeah, it's I'd be interested to see hear what other lodges are doing. I mean, it's not just the 1 or 2 big items that we hear about every year. It's all the other little things that lodges are doing. Especially things like, I know it's a big button for us at St. Mark's as well as the education piece. We're doing what we can, but it'd be nice to hear what other lodges are doing and what they're adapting, and if they're borrowing our process and what we do, what they're adapting to their own lodges, so maybe we can improve what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think that one of the main benefits that I see coming from this podcast is really the improvement of Masonry as a whole in the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And that's, our tagline is helping to set the foundation of New Hampshire Freemasonry. And a lot of that we can accomplish by sharing those, I don't want to get too corporate here, but sharing those best practices that we see in each of our own lodges. Mm-hmm. And very often we are very siloed. We don't hear from lodges that are sharing those best practices. We may know they exist. We may have individuals who have knowledge of them. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to learn more about the lodges that we have in our jurisdiction and that we don't hear from very often. So I've got a couple comments popping in now. One is just an interesting member story from our Grand Master. So Most Worshipful Ken Clay says, our Grand Master recently presented a Centenarian Award to a brother who fought in the Battle of the Bulge. So stories like that, maybe it's a story from that brother. Maybe it's a recording that we can, just get him. If he can't get onto a podcast like this, we have the capability to be mobile. One of the reasons that Chris reached out to me is because I've recently made some quarantine purchases with microphones and a podcast studio that I can pick up and take anywhere. They may not always have to be live streamed, but we can certainly find ways, if a lodge has Wi-Fi available, we can live stream from a lodge, we can live stream from a brother's house and sit down and have a conversation with them. And I think that sort of flexibility that exists now in the world we live in is certainly something we didn't see, 10 years ago. And in some cases, it's something we didn't see 5 years ago. I think that, home internet is in a lot of places getting better, and we can support live streaming pretty much anywhere. And if we can't live stream it, I've got the ability to record it to an SD card, download it, and post it as an audio-only podcast, or we can record the video and post it to our YouTube channel. So we are looking at a lot of different ways of delivering this content. Live streaming is great for us because we want the interaction from our audience, certainly, but in cases where we can't do it, I know that myself and I'm speaking for Chris here, we have no problem leaving the house and going to get those stories where we need to get them, because this is a platform that not everybody is going to be comfortable with. And I don't want to exclude any of those fantastic stories from being told just because they're not comfortable either getting in front of a camera or getting online and doing this live. So that's really what we're looking at, is every avenue to tell a story and get those stories out. We can deliver those stories from anybody who's got them. We just need to know about them.
So, Tim, are you booking appointments now for?
You're going to be
a
all
wonderful
over.
job at selling yourself.
Hey, I'm just here to host, and I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk, because I can only say so much, and there's only so much time I can fill.
But I think that point, sort of the living history, the living Masonic history, right? We have got, like the Grand Master just, mentioned, we don't have that many World War II vets left. So, guys like that have experienced, and oftentimes their Masonic experience is connected with their war experience, which there's some remarkable stories to tell there. So, stories like that, absolutely. That's stuff that absolutely needs to be captured, and it is so valuable that, and if we don't, then, what do we lose? And I think it's a lot. So, stuff like that is really, that type of content's really, I think, compelling to all of us and important.
And if your lodge,
go forward.
Sorry.
No, sorry.
If your lodge has a historian, and that historian knows who these brothers are and what sort of stories there are to tell, we can sit down with that individual and put those things to tape, as it were, and record those, for posterity's sake, and keep them alive and share them with the fraternity as a whole. We've got a question coming in from one of our Facebook pages. So for those of you who don't know, we are currently streaming this live on three separate Facebook pages, a Twitch page, and a YouTube page, as well as, I believe, Twitter. And we have about 60 people watching right now. So on the Granite Cornerstone podcast Facebook page, we have a question from Ed Correa, which says, would allied Masonic organizations be presented, such as the York and Scottish Rites?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are definitely areas that we'd want to go if the brethren want to hear about it. Absolutely. There's so much there. I would say that the counter to that is, I would say probably the majority of what we're going to cover is going to be Blue Lodge related, but I absolutely do not would not nix any idea about including any of the other appendant bodies or youth organizations into what we do.
I think, bringing up a great point, Chris. I think that getting our youth organizations involved and and allowing them to tell their stories is a great idea as well. We have a lot of brothers who have come from those organizations, again, pointing to Scott. Scott was a DMLA. His son is a DMLA and now a member of St. Mark's.
Yes.
And hearing his stories, as well as the stories of the guys who may not continue on to Freemasonry. So people whose stories in their youth organizations may be lost to us forever if we don't capture them. I'd love to hear from those individuals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if you're going to talk about senior DMLAs, you have to include our Grand Master as well, because he is also a senior DMLA.
Yep. So there it is. There's, and you know, when you sit at Grand Lodge, and Most Worshipful Clay has been great about doing this. He points out those individuals who are senior DMLA, and you look around the room, and there's a lot of them. And that may be an episode all on its own. You know, get rid of the DMLA members now. Hold that for one episode. But talking to senior DMLAs and understanding their journey through the youth organization, their decision to continue on in Masonry, and the way that they feel DMLA has interacted or impacted their career as a Mason, I think that's a fascinating story to tell.
Yeah, and to your point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
No, I was going to say it would be interesting to hear what other senior DMLAs have to say. But I think it's also important to understand that, you know, DMLA isn't really designed to be a for lack of a better term, recruiting tool for Masonry. Right. I mean, I have a lot of fellow DMLA brothers that never step foot into the fraternity. I'm not going to take anything away from any of them, because most of them are very good, fine, upstanding guys. In fact, they're guys that are, you know, in some cases, leaders in their, you know, their own organizations in their workplaces. So DMLA does an awful lot of good for men, whether or not they go into the fraternity or not.
I agree with you. I think that DMLA has a story to tell. I think that Rainbow has a story to tell. And to Ed's point, I think that the appendant bodies have stories to tell that we also don't hear. And I think that New Hampshire Masons need to be represented more widely than we've been able to do. And I think this is maybe not the perfect venue, but it's a very good one to do it.
Right.
And I think that we're going to make the effort that we can put in to make it as good of a product for people to listen to, but also for people to participate in, because we know that it can be hard to tell those stories and hard to get people into one room. And so thankfully the advent of technology, and we've got a lot of brothers who may not be as seasoned with technology who have jumped into it because they've had to as a result of what's been going on the last couple of months. So we're going to ride that momentum and get as much as we can in order to deliver those tales.
Yeah, that Band-Aid has been ripped off. You know,
yeah, in fact, over at St. Mark's, we're actually talking about, even though that we've been doing education nights online, that even as we're coming out of, you know, staying at home all the time, we're actually going to do a hybrid where we'll have sessions available at the lodge, and then we're also going to do online sessions so that we can continue to work with other lodge brothers from across the jurisdiction, because we have several brothers that show up from other districts, which is a fantastic thing to get their perspective as we talk about different topics.
Yeah, I think, you know, from my perspective is, you know, I'm sitting master of my lodge during this pandemic, and seeing the way we've had to adapt. It's amazing to me the number of people who are getting on lodge Zoom calls, the range of ages and experience that we're seeing on those calls. And for me, you know, there are absolutely takeaways that I think should continue on. Personally, I know that we've had problems getting brothers to officers of lodge to come to every officer meeting, and sometimes we don't hear their voice on a topic that may be relevant to them. My attendance on those sort of meetings has been fantastic, you know, when we do them online. So I think we're going to see a lot of online content and a lot of online discussion being carried forward as we hopefully exit this pandemic and move into whatever the future holds. I think that we're looking at a big chunk of the future in this content delivery.
Oh, definitely. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, we're just sort of, you know, this is sort of the tip of the iceberg, you know, as far as what is capable, what you know, what's available to us as far as delivering this type of content. So we're going to continue looking into you know, new ways, and obviously this is something, this podcast is something that is going to change and improve and hopefully grow over time. So that's the constant forward momentum, from taking, and the Grandmaster said this before, taking something, turning something, transforming something bad into something good, and that's really what we're trying to do here.
So we've got a comment in the Facebook chat from the New Hampshire Freemasons page, and it's from Right Worshipful Brother Larry Sprague. He just wanted to share that his lodge also has a Battle of the Bulge veteran as a member. He's the past master. He is a recipient of the Major General John Sullivan Distinguished Service Medal in gold.
In gold.
In
there
gold.
There are very few of those, brethren.
He is a past Grand Steward, and he's recently turned 96 and is the holder of the Boston Post cane in Cornish, as well as being a Purple Heart recipient. So, were it not for an offhanded comment from the Grand Master on a podcast that didn't exist a month ago, we wouldn't have heard that second story.
Right. That's incredible.
And I think that's exactly the sort of thing that we need to be hearing. And we want to hear that. We've got another comment from Ed Correa. It says, I wonder how many brothers who were made Masons outside of the United States and then became members here in New Hampshire and what their experiences were like.
Oh, yeah.
Actually,
and you know what?
We actually had one in St. Mark's. He's moved south since that time. He's a past master of our lodge. He was actually raised in Germany.
Yes.
And then served as master of his lodge in Germany, and then served as master of St. Mark's Lodge a few years ago. So it's very interesting, because one of the big things that comes up is the differences in the ritual. Well, you leave this out, and we used to talk about it. You talk about this, but we didn't have that. So it makes for some interesting conversations when you start to pull apart what's going on in the lodge room.
And one's in German.
I know. Actually, it may not be the German. So there are actually 4 Grand Lodges in Germany.
Yeah, this was several years ago. He was actually in a military lodge. So,
yeah, the American Canadian probably.
Oh, yeah.
I would bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually, Ancient York also has a brother, Brother Joe Olafarovich, who came through the Swedish Rite in Germany, which is a very different system for brethren that don't know, a 10-degree system that is, very, very interesting. So it would be nice to be able to that point bring a few of those guys together. Absolutely. And I know Ed's a member of Harry S. Truman Lodge in Korea. So thank you very much, Ed, for that, Worshipful, for that comment.
We have a brother watching on the New Hampshire Freemasons page, Brother Anil Yasan R. He's Turkish,
yes,
raised in New Hampshire, and now he lives in Mexico. So
I didn't know he lived there now. A member of Washington Lodge number 61, I believe.
Well, there you go. This podcast has already gone global, boys.
That's great. I love it.
It only took 45 minutes.
Brother Tom Ladd is sharing a comment in the New Hampshire Freemasons page that says that in his lodge, North Star Lodge number 8, they had this exact same discussion. And just in that lodge, he had brothers raised in foreign countries such as Japan, Germany, and even New Jersey.
Well, if that's not a foreign country, I don't know what is.
Wow.
That wasn't a good enough.
We can cross visiting that area off.
That wasn't a good enough laugh. We'll have to work on that, Mike. I have to.
You just got to be fun here.
I got to be funny. I'm just not.
Yeah, but now we got to cross one area of the country we can't travel too off. So.
Right. So yeah, no, that's wonderful. And again, to your point, Tim, I mean, having this out there and just having one comment generate all of this discussion is beautiful, and is exactly to me the point of what we're trying to do.
And Right Worshipful Brother Dave Aker just telling me that Federal number 5 has a brother who came from an Italian lodge.
Ooh.
So I just want, just as a side note, I know we mentioned about how an offhand comment spurred all these other conversations. What's really important was to understand here is that if it wasn't for the platform we're currently using, a lot of this wouldn't have happened, because Tim, if I'm not mistaken, you're pulling comments from several different locations that we're broadcasting to, and most of the time we're on one broadcast. It's just YouTube or just Facebook, and now you've got several different venues that brothers can join in on, which helps spread the communication, the discussion out a little further than it normally would go.
Yeah, I mean, we have 28 brothers watching across 3 different platforms on Facebook, and we have another 33 currently watching on YouTube. And to your point, Scott, previously we've only done, a broadcast here or a broadcast there, and the Grand Lodge has recently invested in some technology called Restream, which allows us to live stream to all of these platforms simultaneously. Unfortunately, the chat function is broken, so for anybody who is watching me, or at least watching where my eyes go, I'm clicking through all of the tabs to make sure that I have an idea of what's being said everywhere, which is degrading my connection a little bit, but we're getting through it. And I think that having all of this discussion for people who are, maybe you're not a member of the New Hampshire Freemasons page, but you are a member of NH Freemasons, or you're a member of the Granite Podcast page, or you're a YouTube user and you want to search there. We can find you and we can get that content to you. And I think that getting responses back from everybody is also really important, because as we've been saying, this doesn't succeed without engagement from the audience. And that's why we chose live streaming this as opposed to just recording it and uploading it, because we want to hear what you have to say as we're talking. And even as we move forward into future conversation, we'll have no problem integrating a question from the audience and asking the individuals who are guests on the podcast that evening.
Right, and I know that you're flipping around through the different pages. I've actually had the chat window up for YouTube for the last several minutes, and I noticed that there was a comment in there about from Don Gray, said he didn't know there was such a thing as a senior DMLA. Yep. So for those that aren't familiar, DMLA is for young men from 12 to 21. So when you hit your 21st birthday, you age out of DMLA. And there's a few exceptions to that rule, depending if you're an officer at the time. But for the most part, when you turn 21, you majority out or age out of DMLA. When you do that, DMLA is a lifetime organization now. So once you majority out or age out, you become a senior DMLA. As they like to say now, once a DMLA, always a DMLA. Mm-hmm. And they actually have changed the system for tracking those types of things. So they actually get to, if you log into your account with DMLA International, they'll actually show you how long you've been a DMLA. And it gets very sad when you start to see the number of decades pile up. So, and I know that Chris, I believe you could speak better to how Rainbow handles it. I don't know if there's a special term or if they do the same type of thing for Rainbow as we do for DMLA.
Yeah, it's majority, and that's the same term that you use, majority. And the Rainbow organization really wants to continue to have girls that have aged out of DMLA at 21, or sometimes a little bit earlier, but usually at 20 or 21, to be able to remain active in the organization. So, majority, a majority girl. Even though clearly they've moved on to womanhood, but that's typically how they're referred to. But pretty much the same thing applies.
Yeah, we at 21 we become a senior DMLA. If you're a sitting officer, you'll maintain your active DMLA status till the end of your term. Yeah. But we don't have a petition process to go past the end of the existing term, so it's a little bit more definitive when you're going to be leaving.
So we've got a comment, not a question, but a comment from Worshipful Brother Richard Seyfried, who is a past master of Spigot Lodge number 85 over in Salem. He said that YouTube wouldn't work for him, and he's watching through Facebook, so he's glad that we diversified the broadcast. Okay. We've got a similar comment from Steve Minnan over on YouTube saying, open conversations such as these, broadcasted across many platforms, will also open gateways for those who are interested in Masonry, but don't know where to start. And I think that's something to address is, we're targeting Masons. A lot of the conversations we're going to be having are with Masons and for Masons, but at the same time, allowing these discussions to be broadcast publicly is something that will help answer some questions, and maybe, especially as we get into, the episodes 3 and 4, where we talk about the Masonic journey, it will answer a lot of the questions for prospective members. And it is something, especially that episode with the new guys, something that we can point to and say, this is what these guys have gone through. They've, recently completed their or they've recently started their journey, and here's what you can look forward to as a new member, especially when we have somebody that we know is interested and just looking for more information.
And that's an excellent point. And we're going through a renaissance, I believe. I certainly believe that. I hope a lot of you brethren do as well. And I think I've seen a lot of guys that have been coming through that are currently, working the degrees, and new Master Masons that are very excited about their journey and what they can do to be able to, to help Freemasonry, to help New Hampshire Freemasonry, to help their lodges. And that sort of enthusiasm is infectious. And those stories, on both sides, really talk about the type of journey that we're on together, on both ends, especially when we're talking about, the next few episodes. So, keep in mind, this, we don't recruit. This is not a recruiting tool, but, to humanize what we do and who we are, locally here in New Hampshire, as Masons, I think is super important. Yeah.
Tim's busy looking at stuff.
Yeah, he is.
I'm just trying to make sure I've got my eyes on all the platforms here. So for those of you who aren't familiar with streaming, generally we should have the comments coming up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, something is broken in our platform, and it's only showing me comments from Twitch. And I don't believe there are many brothers currently watching on Twitch.
No, because we didn't tell anyone we were using it. So
it looks like one, and it's probably me.
Game time decision. But yeah, I mean, brethren, the technical aspects that we'll work out. Obviously this is the first time doing this specifically, and I think as we go through, I mean, this platform is a fantastic platform. I know that it is, and again, as we use it, we're learning a little bit more and more. So hopefully we'll be able to have all of those chats centralized and have it be less going back and forth through browser tabs as we're having to do tonight, unfortunately.
Yeah, but Tim likes doing all the extra work, I can tell.
Yeah, I'm getting a real workout on my mouse finger here. So, Chris, I guess as we're looking to wrap up this episode, we are trying to keep these to a tight 45 to 60.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think we should be working on as, obviously the communications committee and myself, and what do you think we can improve on as we move forward, and what are the signs that we should be looking at to measure our success and our growth on this platform?
Well, the primary signs is engagement by all of you. We have a lot of analytics. They're going to tell us a lot of great information about, who's watching and when. But ultimately, that's what it boils down to, is that if you're participating, if you're watching, if you're commenting, if you want to be on for a reason. Oh, I've got somebody that just chatted on Twitch, so thank you for that. That's really what's going to gauge the success of this, is if we continue to hear that feedback. If that feedback stops, we're going to think that either we're on autopilot, which we don't want to be, or something's not right. So we want to hear everything, both positive and neutral / negative, constructive feedback of what we're doing, and just keep it coming. But I really hope that tonight's sort of taste, at least of the discussion. Luckily, I have a face for radio and a voice for probably the circus. I don't know what to compare that to, and luckily we have a great host in Tim, and we're all going to be working together to put together some compelling content. And if we do that and you guys like it, then we want to hear, and that's the bottom line.
Scott, any remarks from you?
Well, first off, make sure you got your audio and video in sync. But beyond that, yes. And I think I solved that problem. So I think overall it's going to be a good podcast. I'm looking forward to actually hearing and watching the other podcasts as they come out. And like I said earlier, for me, it's not just about the engagement on the platforms as we're doing the podcast itself, but it's what people are talking about afterwards. Sending the emails in to either us as a group or us individually. when you see one of us out during the fall season, especially since a lot of us will be traveling around with our masks on, brothers, to make sure that if you liked the podcast, that you let us know. Me personally, I think that talking about it afterwards is a better sign of what the engagement is actually like versus the comments that are on as we're doing things right now.
I would agree with that.
One of the things that we can ask for as the communications committee and as the host of this podcast really is, please take the information about what we're doing back to your lodges. As many of you have seen, we are putting out communications from the Grand Secretary's office with notifications about what we're planning and when we're going live and links to find it. And to some, we have a couple of people who are saying in the chat, let's make sure we're getting those out after. Make sure we're getting them out after as well, because I know, Chris, you've shared with me some of the feedback about the Q&A sessions is we weren't there to watch it. Now is it gone forever? And, for people who are aware of these platforms, obviously, you can go back and get it. But for people who aren't, YouTube will save this until we delete it from the channel. It will be saved on Twitch, and it will be saved as a video on each of the Facebook pages that we broadcast to. So all of your brothers can go out and find it. And for those who weren't able to make it tonight, we really do encourage you to share that information with them and make sure that, as I said earlier, you're signed up in Grandview, your email is up to date, because those communications that are coming from the Grand Secretary are going to point you in the direction for both the past content that we've shared and the future content we have coming up. And that's not just about this podcast. Obviously, those communications are going to have a lot of information about a lot of things that are going on. We've got a lot of comments in the chat tonight thanking us for this engagement opportunity and saying we've done a great job. With that, I think I have no more closing remarks. Chris or Scott?
The only thing I would add to what you were saying, Tim, is for those that are on the line, if you're a district officer from a different district, if you're a master of your lodge, if you're a secretary of your lodge, be sure to talk it up at your lodge meetings and put it in your trestle board. Even if it's just pointing them to the Grand Lodge Facebook page or the Grand Lodge YouTube site so they can try and figure out more information about it, at least that much helps them get an understanding of what's available and what's out there. The worst thing we can do is not tell people about this and then they miss out on it, or find out about it, months after we're into it, and then say, I got to watch all that to get caught up. So, especially this first episode, with all of our little technical glitches and fun stuff. So, but yeah, I'd say, other than that, it's been a real interesting evening. It's been a fun evening, I have to admit, both before and during. So, and I'll leave it at that. But Chris, thanks for, spearheading this. Tim, thanks for hosting. And obviously, if I could be of any more help or pretend that I'm a podcaster on video, I'll be glad to do that for you. So,
and a big shout out to Brother Ryan Flynn for all of our graphics. And thank you to everybody who came and watched us tonight. It was a really great time. Remember, that email is Granite Cornerstone at nhgrandlodge.org. Yeah. We'll be here for you in the future, and we're ready to listen to those suggestions. So please send us an email or reach out to any one of us privately. So thank you all, and have a great night.
Thanks. Good night, brethren.
Thanks.